Welcome to another new episode of the Get Organised with Decluttr Me podcast with myself, Shelina. I hope you're well wherever you are in the world. I'm so happy you're here to join me as part of my decluttering and organising journey. So whether you're brand new today to the show or have been listening for years, I wanted to say thank you for listening as always. It means so much for me that you listen every week and support this podcast and allow me to talk about all things physical, mental, digital with the world of decluttering and organising. I'd love to help more people with their quest for a clutter-free and organised home and mental life. So if you love my podcast, it would be really lovely of you if you could press the follow button, subscribe, or share it with, all your friends and family so that they can hear it as well. And if you do love what you hear, it would be amazing if you could leave a review as well. So thank you so much. So now let's get to the topic at hand today, feeling overwhelmed whilst organising. You might think that as an organiser, I don't have that feeling as I do it all the time, but I have my moments. A few weeks ago, I was with a client dealing with a new closet, and it was just filled with more clothes than had even been shown. And there were loads of wire hangers, which always makes me anxious and annoyed. And I just hit a wall. I had the overwhelmed wall. I had to take a breath. I had to drink water, and I had to keep saying, you can do this, Shelina. You love doing this. This is your thing. Like, calm down, like breathe, just woosah. And thankfully, the client wasn't around to see me having my moment of feeling anxious and feeling overwhelmed. But it happens. We're all human. I'm human, even though I do this all the time. And I do this like in 4 hours and 8 hours, and I just get on with it. But we all have our moments. I was going through some personal issues at the time, and dealing with a huger than expected pile of clothes just made me have that moment of panic. It all worked out in the end. But there was that moment. I mean, the closet was amazing at the end. Like, even though it had that irritating trouser rack thing that they have it in one specific Swedish store, and people buy it going, oh, it'll look amazing. No, it won't, because most people have more than 10 trousers, and that thing fits only 10 trousers, and then they flop off the thing anyway. Like, if you got a rod and hung it with hangers, you'd get 50 trousers, you know what I mean? Or sets and stuff, or skirts and other things you could hang on the rod other than just trousers. I really don't like that trouser rack. I digress. I really digress. But I mean, the closet looked amazing. But the key thing to note was I had my moment of feeling overwhelmed with organising, and we all have that. So I wanted to talk about that today. When you deal with a lot of clutter, you look at it and go, oh my God. And like, from my years of experience, I'm normally not fazed by the clutter, and I start dealing with it by, section by section. But for you, that might be easier said than done. So what you may do when you get overwhelmed is to avoid the task. It's normal to avoid to do the things you are finding more difficult to complete. But the more you avoid, the more overwhelmed and anxious you will get. By avoiding the task that you have to do and doing other tasks that are easier, you can first congratulate yourself on being super productive, but you also have to acknowledge that you've avoided the main task. The more you avoid, the more onerous it will get to do the task. And also, I find that the more people think about organising, the more they get overwhelmed to the point of having a cluttered mind. I mean, imagine you're thinking about what you have to do, and then it's like this nightmare scenario in your mind, and it becomes more complicated until you're exhausted just thinking about it. I mean, I'm just exhausted talking about it. Usually it turns out that the task in hand is not that complicated, and it's more straightforward than your cluttered mind thought. But the cluttered mind has stayed in that head, and it's penetrated into your mind, and you're just like, no, I can't do this. It's too much. It's too overwhelming. I admit I procrastinate doing such things, even my podcast, for several weeks. But when I finally got on with it, I found that it only took a short amount of time, and it wasn't that difficult to do. And I remembered after a while that actually it's not that hard to do. And that's the same with other things. We all procrastinate with certain tasks that we don't want to do. And I've spent days feeling overwhelmed at the thought of doing tasks, a complete waste of time and energy, but I do it. And I'm sure you do that as well. So how do we get out of this vicious circle and start organizing without being overwhelmed? I want to talk about that today. So make a list of all the things I'm going to tell you because it's going to help you. So first, take a deep breath and acknowledge that you are overwhelmed. So whether it's sitting, cross-legged, meditating, or screaming into the void, or doing like I was and just leaning over a bed going, you can do this, Shelina. Taking lots of deep breaths. That's where you have to be the first time. Like, get there, take deep breaths, center your mind, and acknowledge that overwhelmness. Like, embrace it, let it into your core. I sound like a Pilates teacher, but we're talking about organizing. Anyway, next, make a list, either on a piece of paper or on an app. I use TickTick to do my list, and I love TickTick, and I've talked about it on various episodes before in the past. And what I do there is I write down the main task and then make subcategories of it. So then you make the subcategories, and every time you finish a subcategory, you can tick it off. So you feel so much more fulfilled because you've ticked off quite a lot of things. So think about in that list, which areas do you dread going into, from your junk drawer to your closet? Think of every single area that needs help with organizing and decluttering it and write it in that list. And then in that list, make a subcategory. So like if you're doing your closet, make that the main section. And then on the subcategories, do shelf 1, shelf 2, rod 1, rod 2, trouser rack, annoying trouser rack. And, you know, every time you finish each section, you can tick it off so you feel better about yourself. Next, have a deadline to finish that task. So that's always important. So you have something to aim for. Now, if you don't meet that deadline, it's not the end of the world. Like, I don't want you to get depressed and upset and feel like a failure, because you're not. You started a task and you're listening to this episode. So that is obviously going to help you a lot. But have a deadline, because that helps you to get to nearer to that point. If you have a lot of rooms in your list, prioritize the ones that are causing you the most amount of pain right now. And I always say that when people call me and they say they want to do their whole house, I'm like, okay, which area is causing you the most pain? And usually it turns out to be like the kitchen or the bedroom or the living room. So think of that. Think of the key areas that are causing you pain. If it's everything and it all seems terrible, choose one room. Just choose one. You don't have to do everything all at the same time. Then I want you to start the decluttering and organizing task. So as always, and as I always talk about, do a mini declutter. So you spend 15, 20 minutes on one section, such as a shelf, such as a rod, then take a break. You could go back to it after the break or the next day or a week later, but do that. And so do a mini declutter section by section. Doing it all at once will make you feel overwhelmed. So do it in those small sections and use a timer on your phone to set it to 20 minutes. When you are doing the decluttering, view the items and think about whether you want the item. Does it work? Does it fit? Do you love it? Does it make you happy? Is it a duplicate? Because there's a lot of that. If it's still in its bag or its box and it's never been used and it's been there for years, it's likely to never be used. So it's time to get rid of it. And does it have any value? Now, does it have value? That means, real value. Like, does it have real value? If it does, then you can sell it. Or you can give it to someone who can use it. Now, if it has sentimental value, you have to think about what it's going to do for your life. If it stays with you, is it going to enhance it? Are you going to put it up somewhere? Are you going to wear it? Or are you just going to let it languish in a box in the back of the room? Think about that as well. It's great to have stuff that's got sentimental value to you, but if you're not using it, if you're not looking at it, if you're not having it as part of your day-to-day life, then what is the point of it? It's just going to hide in a box, and there is no point to that. Any items that are broken or in a bad shape, put them in the rubbish bin. Anything that you can put in recycling, put it in recycling. Or donate, free cycle, or try and sell it. Now, as you know, I'm not a fan of selling. It's a pain in the ass. People always want things for 5 dirhams instead of 1,000 dirhams, and it drives me insane. So I prefer not to do it. But if you do and you can, go for it. And I mean, in other countries, things have a better value than they do in the UAE. So like in the UK, you can sell a lot of stuff and you'll get money for it. So if you can be bothered, great, go for it. I just don't like doing it. So you're doing the decluttering, you're doing the organizing, and work on the section until the time says stop. If you need some more time, then go ahead and finish that area if you have time. If you don't, you can go back and set the timer again. If you want to do it alone, do it section by section, following the steps above, writing the list and doing the mini declutter. Breaking down the project will make it more manageable, less overwhelming, and more achievable. If you're dealing with an area that is sensitive, then give yourself grace. It will take longer and you may find it more difficult to declutter the items. When you do decide to declutter the items, be firm with your decision. If it's too hard to deal with that day, put it aside for another short session another day, but don't be harsh on yourself. And this is especially relevant if you're dealing with, somebody that you've lost and you're grieving and you have to go through the items. It's always hard. So just give yourself grace when doing that stuff. Another thing that helps me when decluttering and organizing is listening to music. When I'm alone, dealing with a client's space, I put my headphones on and listen to Madonna, 80s music or 90s because it reminds me of uni, or my favorite playlist. Listen to tunes that you can sing along to without thinking and will make you happy. It's like a whistle while you work without the 7 dwarfs or Snow White, even though I have the black hair and I could have red lips, but I don't wear lipstick while I'm working. But yeah, do things that make you feel happy while you're organizing and decluttering. And I can't tell you enough how much music makes me more motivated and helps me so much while I'm decluttering and organizing. Now, if it's all too much for you to handle, even whilst listening to music, then get a professional organizer in like myself. The organizer should be impartial, judgment-free, and fun to have in your own personal space. They will help push you in the right direction to get you to declutter items, and whilst you're decluttering, they can get on with the organizing of your space. It may cost a bit of money, but they can help you to get where you want in a shorter time frame. Now, a lot of people use me and use other organizers because of that, because it's too much and they feel too overwhelmed. And it's not something to be embarrassed about because there is still that stigma like, I should be able to do this myself. But if it is too much and you can't do it yourself, get outside help. Get a professional organizer to help you. Like if you had a pipe that burst, you'd get a plumber in. So think of this as the burst pipe. This is the burst decluttering mess and you need help. So go get help. Get someone to come in and help you to deal with it. And of course, you can always contact me and I'd be happy to help. I'm happy to fly anywhere around the world. I'd love it. So, you can always get in touch. You can DM me or send me a message or send a message in the comment box. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope I haven't overwhelmed you with all my tips, but I've helped you to feel less overwhelmed when organizing. As always, thanks for listening to the episode. If you loved what you heard, please share it with your friends and your family and anyone who needs help right now with decluttering and organizing and is feeling really overwhelmed. So thanks again, and I'll speak to you next week. Take care. Bye.